So Sneh, thank you very much for making time to share your insights into the future of leadership.
Thank you. Thanks for giving me the opportunity. I really look forward to the conversation.
Thank you, and it's great to have you, Sneh. Before we walk into the future, can you please tell us a little bit about your background? Where did you grow up?
Yeah, so I am a Zulu girl. I like to call myself. So I grew up in KZN, in the south of Durban, a township called Kwamakuta, which is right next to Toti, which is quite a popular holiday town. So I love the sea. I am inspired by the sea because I grew up on the coast. And I'm the eldest of 4 children, born to very hardworking parents. My mother was a nurse and my dad was an operator in a plant close to our home. So come from a very working class family. And the one thing that my parents instilled in me was the fact that education is what will get you out of poverty. So they invested everything possible in our education. So I went to a girls' boarding school for my high school education, which was run by Catholic nuns in the north of Durban in Oakford, run by German nuns, by the way. Very structured, very strict. And I went there for my high school education for 5 years. I went to mass every Sunday, went to mass on Wednesdays. So very structured, but I think what was instilled in us was the value of hard work and the value of discipline and structure, which I think I've taken forward in my life since then. But obviously, I then went to university in Grahamstown, to Rhodes, and got my first degree. And my first job was in Durban, and my second job actually. And then I moved to Cape Town, and then I moved to the Netherlands in The Hague, and then I moved to Secunda in Mpumalanga. And then I moved to Johannesburg, and now I'm here. So I've kind of lived all over the show, which also I suppose is an indicator of my adventurous spirit. There was a time before I had a family when the company said, pack your suitcase. I did exactly that. And I went to wherever I was sent because I enjoy travel. I enjoy adventure, and I enjoy meeting people and learning from them. So that's my background. I have a social science degree. So that was my first degree. I started off intending to be a psychologist, but because my parents needed me to support them in furthering the education of my other siblings, I cut that short and did a major in social work. So I started off my working life as a social worker stroke therapist at a Sanka rehabilitation center for alcoholics and drug addicts. And then I did that for about 3.5 years. And the bug for human resources bit, and I decided to study further and get into human resources. I think what drove me was the fact that I didn't want to be part of only healing pathology in people. I wanted to be part of developing their human potential. And therefore, I then started my career in human resources, joined Haggy Rand initially, then Shell and BP Refinery in Durban, then moved to Cape Town with Shell, and moved to the Netherlands and The Hague with Shell, and then joined Sasol in Sasol Mining And then, the rest is history. And now
Right.
I'm here at Tiger.
And Sneh, can you tell us what was your dream career in your early days?
So I wanted to be a psychologist. I think I saw how much strife there was around us growing up in the township, and I wanted to be part of the solution. And at the time, I think that's what I was exposed to as part of the solution around people being healthy mentally and psychologically. But I think once I started my career as a therapist, because the intent was to study further, get a master's, and then practice as a psychologist, I think I had a change of heart in terms of I wanted to proactively actually develop people's potential. And that's why I went into human resources. And now I'm here and I just love it. My favorite part of my job is being able to really inspire people to live out their true potential.
And Sneh, can you tell us who inspired you in your early days?
I think my mother was a very hardworking woman, very strong, and she was the center and the heart of our home, but also very ambitious in her own way. She didn't have as many opportunities as I've had, but she drove us. She made us want to work hard to achieve our dreams. And she really inspired all of us. And when I say all of us, I include my siblings, to be the best version of ourselves, but from a values base. So she instilled very strong values around passion, excellence, hard work, compassion for others. So she was a very, very strong and inspirational leader in our family.
And Sneh, what would you say is driving you today?
I think similarly, it is that sense of passion and excellence. If you're going to do it in halves, don't bother doing it. Go big or go home. So I think my sense of work ethic also comes from that upbringing, and then of course the German influence of the boarding school environment also got into that. So I find I'm quite driven to support others and to build others up and to build high performing teams and organizations. And obviously at the center of that is building high performing leaders as well. So I'm quite driven by that. And I love what I do. That's probably why I work myself to death.
No, I hope not. Now, Sneh, looking into the future, and I know it's a big question, but what does the future of leadership mean to you?
It's a very big question, huh? I think where, and I talk about this often, where leaders in the past were expected to know everything and to be the sort of beacons of the future. I think leaders in the future will be expected to be quite humble and acknowledge that they don't know everything. They don't see everything. So their success as leaders is purely dependent on the capabilities that they build in their teams to be able to see beyond today and beyond today's horizon and be able to see the bigger picture, what the bigger needs are around the world and how they and their teams need to fulfill those needs. So I think the future of leadership is about building strong capabilities around you. It's about being self-aware and knowing what your limitations are and building teams around you that close the gap of your own shortcomings and being quite prepared to unlearn certain things and learn new things, and eventually be prepared to constantly challenge the status quo and challenge yourself and your teams on what is it that we are not seeing, what is it that we don't know, and what is it that we need to change. So essentially, the leaders of the future need to be quite innovative in how they run their organizations, how they make a difference. And eventually it needs to be about legacy and leaving the place where you are far better than the way that you found it.
Now, Sneh, these are challenging times as the world is stumbling from one crisis into the next. What is your advice for future leaders in terms of challenges? What are some of the biggest challenges they should expect to encounter in their career?
I think it's an unpredictable world and an unpredictable future. Who knew before 2020 that we'd be dealing with the biggest pandemic of our life in our lifetime? And have to change completely the way that we work, the way we lead, the way we run our families. So I think the leaders of the future have to be very prepared for an unpredictable. I know everyone talks about VUCA, but for me it's about the unpredictability. So you can't have a standard set of skills. You have to be adaptable, be able to think on your feet, be agile, and really think about solutions that have not, for problems that have not even occurred yet. So I think those are the kinds of challenges. And I think what's come up more and more in my experience is that leaders also have to be able to deal with very diverse environments, diverse teams, diverse environments. I see leaders in our organizations that have to manage people from very different generations, very different backgrounds, very different nationalities. So the ability to navigate and leverage diversity as a competitive advantage is going to be huge going forward, and being able to just adapt to very diverse situations and environments is going to be massive for leaders going forward.
And Sneh, as a mentor to future leaders, can you maybe share a success story or two where you mentored an upcoming leader and that person took your advice to heart?
Yeah, so I used to, in a previous role, I used to run a high potential development program, which accelerated young engineers, young professionals into leadership positions in a very purposeful way by moving them around in the organization on different assignments and so on. And one of the people that I helped identify from a plant in Sasolburg is today an executive vice president of that business, of operations in that business. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't so long ago that we identified him and I helped guide, in a sense, his future moves in the organization, and he's now part of a group exco. There's another young lady that I have mentored for a number of years who has, from a discipline perspective, has transitioned from thinking she's a pure specialist in her area of expertise to a more general manager, and she's just recently taken a role. And I think for me, that demonstrates that as a leader, you have to have the insight and the ability to help someone see strengths that they might not be aware of yet. I think it's Liz Wiseman who wrote Multipliers, who talks about the native genius. And us as leaders have the massive role of really helping people identify their own native genius, what they're really fantastic at, and then helping them really build that up and use it as a source of success and a source of impact.
And Sneh, looking back over your learning journey and your leadership journey, are there any role models of leadership that you recommend future leaders should study?
I think I'm going to be a little bit unconventional and say I don't have specific people, although I could point out to some examples. But I think the sort of role models I've learned the most from are the people who don't say this is how we've done it before, but the people that say it can be different. We can do it differently. So the people who are catalysts for change, the people who agitate and are activists for others' needs, particularly for marginalized communities, marginalized groups, etc. Those are the people I think we can learn big leadership lessons for. People who come from hardship, but in that hardship see a very different horizon and a different future, and they work really hard and rally the troops around the hardships and get through the hardships to get to the imagined horizon. And I suppose one could argue people like Nelson Mandela are examples of that. And I think teachers are actually great teachers are great examples of leaders, because they take you from your uneducated state and move you to a position of knowledge, but help you see a very different future for yourself. One of my favorite teachers in high school was Miss McLean, and she was such a fantastic English teacher that she turned me into an amateur writer because she made me so passionate about the language. So I think leaders are those people who can really instill that passion around a horizon and a future that's not been seen yet, and really rally the troops to work very hard to reach that horizon.
And Sneh, how can our listeners connect with you, and where should they follow you?
I'm on LinkedIn. I'm not really a big social media person. I think I'm on LinkedIn because it's functionally useful in terms of scouting for talent, connecting with talent, which I love to do. You know, but I've posted an article or two recently, but I'm not really a big social media person. But I am on LinkedIn and have a few followers.
And Sneh, last but not least, since you mentioned the word legacy, what would you like to be remembered for?
I'd like to be remembered for that leader who really ignited the potential in others and helped them see a future that they hadn't seen yet, or help them pursue something they're really talented at that they hadn't seen yet. And that leader who really ignited not only potential of individuals, but of teams and organizations and communities.
Thank you. Sneh, thank you so much for sharing your insights and your wisdom into the future.
I hope it was useful.
It was very useful. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.